welcome to the Second Nature podcast. My name is Shodi Morris. As always, excited to be here and have another incredible guest for you today. So today I am spending some time with a fantastic human. A lot of times when I pull together an interview, often what inspires me is having conversation around their career, what it is they do for a living, and how they can continue to offer that to other people and in turn affect the world in beautiful ways. And today, my guest does incredible things with his career, but we're just going to be chit-chatting more on a personal note today, just who my guest is as a person. And he founded a business called Dependable Solutions in 2003. So 22 years now. He has expanded to 3 locations and built a business of 30 team members currently. So that is amazing and impressive. Please welcome my guest, Joseph Ruskey.
Hey, Shodi, glad to be here.
Thank you. So, yeah, I mean, we could talk business, but...
We can talk whatever you want. We can talk everything today.
I feel like if we talked business, like, what you do is like another planet to me, and it would, like, bore me. So we'd end up venturing off into, like, philosophy and like other great things anyway, which you're great at.
Yeah,
so.
we'll go wherever we want. If everybody knew my job, I wouldn't have one. So it's good that it would bore you and you wouldn't like it. So
yes, correct. So honestly, the reason I wanted to sit and have a conversation with you today is basically kind of like one word. And it's service.
Sure.
And I've known who you are for probably 20 years, but just got to know you better over the last, I'd say, 2.5 years.
Yep.
And a conversation we had a couple years back really kind of just told me who you were as a person. And I think we were talking business, and you mentioned kind of what your retirement plan was, and like beautiful vision. And I don't honestly personally know a whole lot of people that look to their retirement to be of service. And so I don't know if you recall that conversation. I think kind of maybe we were talking about Rotary. Yep. And, like maybe the cruise and like traveling the world. So let's talk about that. Sure. But, yeah, let's just talk all things service and what it is within you that, what is that spark within you? Like what makes you come alive about all of that?
Yeah, I honestly feel, regardless if you believe it's God, the universe, whatever it is, I think we're here for a simple purpose. We're only here for a short time, right? I mean, 100 years, when you think of eternity, like it's super short. And my thing is we have to be here for a purpose. And I believe that purpose is to serve other people, to make this world, I always say, when I get involved, whether it's business or service or anything, my goal is to make it better than when I got there. And so I think if we can serve people in some way, that really is the goal to life. We can make all this money or they always talk about time, talent, or treasure, right? And all of them are just as important. And whether you share your time, your talent, or your treasure, or all of the above, what does it matter if you haven't changed a life or made something better? I know there are people, and I know some of these people, we all do, that have a lot of money. But they don't do anything with it, Sure, they go on great vacations and do that. Yeah, self-serving, and it's, and don't get me wrong, you should take advantage of that stuff and go on trips and do great stuff if you work hard. But at the same time, there's a point where you have to look back and say, well, what else? If I'm blessed or if I have these resources, whether it's time, talent, or treasure, how can I use them? And so, my belief is if you can use them to make somebody else better, help their circumstance, or just be that smile that they only got to see one time during the day or something, that's why we're here.
Yes. So it's like this, that makes me feel like this spider web of all these little offshoots of like little branches and which direction to go with that. Like, because you said so much right there. So first of all, your feeling of we're all here for a purpose, and that is to be of service or give.
Yep.
Do you believe or feel that we all have our own gifts that we are to give that come easily to us?
Yeah, I do. I feel that we all have our own gifts. And, not that we can't learn new skills and acquire new skills, but I think we're gifted and talented in certain areas. I look at the world and, just the world that we live in on Earth, and it's so perfectly designed. And, you look at who likes mosquitoes? I don't, you don't, but guess what? Bats sure do, right? I mean, so.
And some of my favorite birds.
Exactly, right. So, I mean, if the world is so perfect that a mosquito was created for food for something else, then I think that creation also strategically placed us to do the different things in the right time that we're here on this earth. So yeah, I believe that we have special talents and we're here at the right time to do whatever we're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm. So for you personally, what do you feel some of your gifts are that you can share with the world?
Sure. I think one of the things I can that I share with a lot of people is just experience, in the sense of, and wisdom, and I'm not saying that in a self-serving way, but I was just thinking about it this morning. We all go through stuff, whether it's self-imposed or not. We go through things that while we're going through them, they hurt. Maybe they're rough. Maybe we look at the situation and say, why did I do that? All that. When you come out from that at the end, hopefully you learn a lesson. If you learn a lesson, you've gained wisdom. And I've just made a lot of mistakes. So I've had the opportunity to gain wisdom in those areas. And so, there's a lot of things I can share with people, when they think, oh my gosh, I did this and I messed up, or, oh man, do you see what's going on in my life? And I'm able to just sit down and say, I get it, right? It sucks. It hurts. You wish you weren't going through it, but look at it from another perspective. Look at it from a perspective as, what am I learning? What am I supposed to be learning? What's the universe showing me? And I can bring that perspective. And maybe even if it's not exactly the same issue, just the perspective that I've screwed up a lot, I've done a lot, yet I've learned a lot. And if you can just look at every situation and say, what am I learning in this situation? It changes the whole perspective. Doesn't mean it makes it easy. Doesn't mean it makes it not hurt. But what it does do is it lets you realize, all right, there's a purpose for this. And if I can learn what this purpose is, hopefully I never have to go through this again.
Mm-hmm. So one of my favorite quotes is, one of my people out in the field that I work with, he often says, I've failed my way to success.
Yep. I believe that.
That says a lot.
Yep.
I mean, that quote says a lot.
Yep.
And then I feel like the way we know ourselves, we just feel normal to ourselves. But what you just said about one of the gifts that you have is being able to sit with, I don't know what you would call it. Maybe like just trials, sit with your trials and just kind of embrace them and sit. What is this about? Reflect, get a lesson, expand, self-expansion. And I feel like I also share that gift. And so it's interesting when we go out into the world to realize that not everyone shares that same gift. So that gift in you, like that is probably one of the top things that I cherish about you and my connection and friendship with you, because if I'm in a situation where, because anytime emotion is a little bit high,
Yep.
whether it's anger, fear, frustration, it kind of muddies the waters and harder to see like what it's really about. And so being able to connect with someone like you who is not emotionally attached to a situation
Yep.
and share like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm dealing with. Like, here's what I think I can take away from this or what I should be taking away. Like, what is your perspective? And for you to be able to reflect back to me, maybe things that I didn't see because no one really wants to continue to get the same lesson over and over. One of my favorite mentors always says, wherever you go, there you are. Different faces and different places, but the same exact theme continues to show up.
Yep.
And I deeply, deeply treasure that in the very few friends that I have that can help me grow, help me reflect, and come out with clarity. So
yeah, I think we also having those people that you can turn to and ask those questions, because you're right. When you're going through it yourself, or I'm going through something myself, you get sometimes your vision gets clouded with emotion. And that's not a bad thing. Emotion's not a bad thing. Sometimes it helps you process what you're going through or deal with what you're going through. But having a trusted person that you can say, hey, you're not emotionally invested in this. Can you tell me what you're seeing and how you're interpreting it? Doesn't mean the person's always going to be right, but it's always good to hear a different perspective.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So how would you define service?
I mean, quite honestly, I think service is changing a life. And I think of the things that I've done, from as simple as brought somebody a cup of coffee, that's out on the street, a homeless person, or, I've traveled I've been lucky to travel around the world. I recently was in India, and I had a group of young homeless children, beggars. One come up to me and ask me for money or something like that. And I had watched. I'd been out there for a few days, and I had watched. And I looked and I watched when a tourist did give them $1, and then all of a sudden, like hordes of people, adults, children, just swarmed this person that gave them $1. And I thought, that's not the best way to solve this issue. And so I had this little child come up to me and said, I'm really hungry. Is there something you could do? And I looked at him and I said, I'll tell you what I can do. I can just pray for you. And that's what I'll do today. And so, that to me was service. And maybe, first of all, again, regardless of your beliefs, talking to the universe, praying, however you want to put it into words, and putting good thought into the world can do a lot for somebody. And so at that moment, that was all I could do for that child. Because giving him $1 might have sounded like the right answer, but it wasn't, because it would have caused chaos. It would have caused problems. It could have caused somebody to get hurt, something like that. And so, I think service is just changing a life and trying to affect somebody in a positive way.
So I also believe that you have and hold the wisdom to know the difference between helping and enabling, and how can I help versus where's the line crossover to enabling a situation or a person.
Yep.
So that's kind of a gift as well to be able to see that.
Yeah, and it's tough. It's tough. I wish I could have given that kid thousands of dollars, right? But reality of the situation is that child never would have saw that money. Because I know India, there's their parents or another adult that takes everything that those children get. So really, you look at the easy fix, which is, give them money, give them food, give them this. And that really wouldn't have helped that child. It would have helped the person that's controlling them. It's not an easy thing, and trust me, the reason it's still in my mind today is I still pray for that kid and those children and all that stuff, because sometimes it hurts not doing what sounds like the easy fix.
Mm-hmm. Totally understand that. So we were talking about building relationships.
Yep.
So I personally don't use your service, your IT service, but I see your stance on social media, and I know that I've followed your company, I know that's another gift of yours is building relationships. And I feel like one of my gifts is being able to detect genuine actions, and you have a gift for building relationships and being genuine. It's never in an attempt to gain something or create an image for yourself or anything like that. I mean, I think I've like, don't you guys help the school buy billboard or scoreboards and all kinds of amazing things? So that's a gift in itself as well as
Right. Yeah, I happen to do IT, cybersecurity, managed services, whatever you want to call it. You happen to do, way beyond massaging, mind, body, soul, help. And I look at it and you could do a lot of stuff. The stuff doesn't matter. What matters is each other, the person you're with, the person you're talking to. I've gone into situations where business owners were talking about IT, and the next thing they're doing is crying because I just related to them. Oh, I've gone through what you're going through in a business, or I've seen this before. And I'm able to relate to them at a personal level. And they're crying, right? At an initial meeting, they're crying to me in person or something like that. And it's not because anybody that knows me, I'm not this super emotional guy, so I don't usually bring out emotions. But what it is it's because I can connect with them. Because there's a lot of good technical people in the world. There's a lot of good people that know the body and are good masseuses, all that stuff. But what there's not enough of is people that care more about the person in front of them versus the dollar that person can give them. And I think really, what does it matter if what I'm doing, I'm super successful, if at the end of the day, I don't have a relationship, And so, and I'm not saying everybody in your business you're going to have this great relationship with and all that. But what I am saying is look for the opportunities, because that person might need to hear one word, or reverse it. You might need to hear a word that person is saying. The knowledge and the wisdom that somebody else is bringing to you, look for that opportunity. And so I think when you start connecting on a relationship, relational base, it changes the way you go after things. You mentioned, scoreboards or working with schools, or, nobody that works with a school is going to get rich, right? Because schools just don't have money. So why do we give to schools and why do we do the things we do? Because it's the kids. If I can connect with the kids and if I can help the kids, that's what's important. If there's one less worry that a superintendent has to have about funding his or her school, and these kids can get a better education simply because I donated some money or volunteered to flip some brats or something, heck yeah, I'm going to do it. And so that's where I think relationship comes in.
So that leads me to share what my good friend Dr. Pat Olenek has said. Have you ever heard the term bodhisattva? And I don't remember what language that comes from, but what it means. It's a name placed on a person, and what bodhisattva is a person in an area of work that changes the world that you would not deem. It's almost like these little hidden gems that you would not expect. So, people might think of like, oh, this pastor, or, like roles where someone's great in changing the world. But she gave the example of her grandma who owned a tavern. And this lady like literally changed the life of so many people. Usually if people have a drink or two, they talk. They talk, they share their feelings. And she had the gift of being able to build relationships, but also like be super genuine and offer kind of like that handout, that next step up, and like bring people up to the next level and be a better person within themselves. And so, that you're a bodhisattva. I don't know if you know that, but yes, it's just people found in unlikely situations that will change the world.
Yeah, I've never heard that word. but now I'm going to definitely research it. I'm real big right now on Chat GPT, so I'm going to go talk to Chat GPT about it and have it teach me a little bit about this. But yeah, it's true, and I mean, I've said this multiple times, and I'm not, I'm not knocking churches or anything, but I've said to people, sometimes I find a more real person, somebody that cares more about me sitting on a bar stool next to me than sitting on the pew next to me, right? And it's not just churches; it could be anything, right? And so it's you look for those people all the time because you never know where you're going to find them. What if it happens to be at a gas station you pull over to get gas, or at the library, or when you go to throw your garbage out, your neighbor walks past you or something. You never know when you're going to get that piece of wisdom that you need, or just that little piece that tells you to keep pushing. And so I think there's a lot of people out there that, again, I think this world is put together so perfectly that when you need it, it'll be there, and you just need to look for it.
Yes. An alignment, like you said, when you need something, it will be there.
Yep.
We were talking last night and then some of the previous meetings, which your Aunt Tammy facilitates our monthly Bible study. And when you were talking about people in unlikely places, and maybe the guy next to you on the bar stool, it's getting out of the box and out of your mind and where great actually is versus where we think it is. But it reminded me with a lot of the stories in the Bible about Jesus never really went to and used people of great status.
Yep.
It was like, I've admittedly have not read the Bible, a lot of it, but I love going through the stories and having the conversations. But he would connect with choose people like the lady that had 5 husbands, or had been divorced 5 times, or the poor person. He always went to the people that no one would expect.
Exactly. Because their egos aren't getting in the way. They're not getting in the way. They're not trying to throw their own wisdom in there. They're just speaking what they feel their heart is telling them to speak. And sometimes the higher up you're elevated, the harder it is to shut your mouth and just let things flow through you. Because you think you're maybe more elevated than you really are. And so I look at all the parables and stuff in the Bible and other books that we've read, and you're right, the ones that are least elevated are sometimes the ones that are utilized the most as the best tools. And so those are the people that we don't necessarily look for, but if we're listening, it's powerful when they come past you and through you and into your life.
Absolutely. So I wanted to talk about giving, and giving, we kind of talked already about giving with the right intention, being of service for the right reasons. Again, that all links back to ego. We were just talking about ego, but actually what happens in our body. So Dr. David Breitbach is a doctor and a chiropractor that I've worked with in person. He has a practice in Viroqua, but he actually travels to other countries and teaches his work there and works on healing people. So when we are givers, we technically, to maintain a healthy body in the way the energy system flows through the body, we're meant to give from our own overflow. And every time he works on me, he can tell there's just this little block or this emptiness. And he said, for whatever reason, women almost always tend to give of themselves and not give from their overflow. And for males, it's just easier for them when they are giving to give from their overflow. Now, it's not always that way. I personally know men that are givers that are not fulfilled, and it's not from an overflow, and they're killing themselves trying to make everybody else happy. But man, when he said that to me, it was like I was called out, but not ashamed to admit, that is true. When I give, I think a lot of it is when we're mothers, there's this human that needs us, and we can't just, let me rest, and then, I'll feed you in 2 days when I'm all recovered,
Right, exactly.
But in general, that practice of fulfilling one's self and then giving to the world around us from our overflow. There's a different feeling, not only facilitating and giving from that place, but also receiving the overflow of a giver who's already fulfilled. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And I, when you were saying that, I agreed with you. Before you even said it, that I think it's probably the innate desire for a mother, for a woman, a mom. They will. I mean, they'll give every last breath to their child, right? Where the husband or the male has typically been taken care of from their mom, from their wife, right? So they may have that opportunity to have a little more of that overflow, like you're talking about, versus giving from their own reserve. And so I agree with you on that.
How do I not feel resentful about that?
I know us guys, we live pretty good lives. But yeah, I agree with you. And really, as you're giving out of that reserve or giving at any time, to how much you get back, right? That helps fill that back up, right? The giving and what you get back. Sometimes you think you're giving and don't realize how much you're receiving.
Correct. So for you and your journey and who you are, and like you've already kind of said, like life has shaped you based on what you've lived and the things you've learned along the way, failing your way to success. Do you have an inspiration, like either growing up or do you have an inspiration in your life or several of them who you watched maybe growing up, or sometimes it's more about who you've watched and learned through adversity? A lot of my life has been that.
Yep. Yeah, so historically, you talked about my Aunt Tammy and my mom, and, so they came from a family that was very giving. They had nothing, 10 kids in the family, yet their mom and their dad always made a point. They would bring somebody off the street. They would feed somebody, even though they barely had food themselves, all that stuff. And so I think that automatically went into my mom. I saw it in my mom and my aunts and my grandma and grandpa when they were alive, and I saw all that stuff. I don't necessarily know if at that point I realized that I was receiving that way of life until I got a little bit older, and I started just naturally feeling that I've got to be giving back. I've got to be just doing more than taking. So I think, without realizing it, they probably taught me to live a life of service without even realizing that that's what I was learning.
Your mom and sister are super comical in our Bible study group because I don't even know for sure, but what percentage Italian, right?
Yep.
So they both get kind of going and they're, get loud and laugh in the stories, and it's, I love it.
Yep.
And they were talking kind of about their parents and like how amazing their parents were at being givers. And I'll probably always remember this story because they painted a very vivid picture. Your mom is older than Tammy, and she had already moved out, maybe 18 or 19. She was still fairly young, but she came back to visit, and mom and dad had just happened to be on their way out the door, and Tammy was still at home, teenager probably, and they left. And I remember her saying it was like pouring down rain, and I don't know what they were going to do, but they came back and 5 or 10 minutes later, and they drag in this lady off the street who had holes in her shoes, and she was soaking wet from the rain. And they're like, here, she needs fed and needs some clean, dry clothes and some shoes. And, and then that image is just really kind of funny, but their house was this revolving door of if they saw someone that was in need, it just, they lived that life of service. And I don't know, that was just amazing to me because you don't see that very often.
No, you don't. And they were also, it wasn't that they lived that life of service out of an abundance, because they didn't have an abundance. They were struggling to get their kids. There's stories that my mom has told me about where, hand-me-down shoes and hand-me-down clothes, and, some of the times where they had to get, whatever was, rice and beans, right? The cheap stuff that fills the belly and all that stuff. And so, they were serving out of a place, not of abundance, but just out of a place of it needs to be done. And so, I think that's a whole different level of servitude that a lot of people don't even realize is it's one thing to give when you got it. It's a whole nother thing to give when you're barely getting by.
Absolutely. I think just kind of hearing some of their stories, their inspiration was just doing God's work.
Yep, I would agree.
Was their perspective. So that also led me, I was kind of pondering our conversation today, and I knew a couple, this was probably 20 years ago, who they were, I don't know, maybe in their 20s at the time. They didn't have an abundance of money, but they got caught up in giving, but I think it was more from what I would label as a wrong place. Someone had convinced them that tithing a percentage of their money to the church was going to get them blessings, but yet they couldn't even buy groceries themselves. And so I think with like giving, there's kind of a fine line of, well, it all goes back to like what Dr. Breitbach talked about, like
right, giving out of abundance,
right? Because if you're suffering, what you have to give is not going to really be changing the world.
Yeah, and I don't, whether it's tithing, whether it's giving what you don't have, if you're doing it with the wrong mindset, if you're doing it expecting something in return, you're doing it for the wrong reason. Right. And so, if you're tithing 10% because you think you're going to get back 10 times, if that's what God or the universe is telling you, then do it. Right. I'm not telling you not to. But if you're not hearing that small voice inside of you telling you to do it and you're just doing it because that's your get rich quick scheme or something like that, it's not going to work.
Right.
The universe is not going to be like, oh, sure, here you go. Now, just because you want it, we're going to give it to you. Because maybe you haven't learned those lessons that give you that wisdom that we talked about earlier.
And don't you think a key to giving is when you give, no matter what, no matter if it's your time in a conversation or money or resources, if you're left feeling fulfilled yourself versus if you're giving and then feeling like, oh, that one hurt. Like that, I think that's kind of your answer right there. Like the giver should always be fulfilled.
Yep. And it doesn't mean it's always going to be easy, right? I mean, like we talked about my grandparents giving out of the scarcity of what they had, yet they were fulfilled because they knew it was the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
And so that's the thing I think people need to realize is sometimes I think people look and say, well, they give because they got it. That's not necessarily the case. And we don't really... Nobody knows really who has what. Just because you're driving a Mercedes and, you've got this big house, you might not have anything, right?
Right.
Nobody knows.
The bank might actually
exactly.
own your ass.
Exactly. And so it always makes me laugh when people think, oh, you own a business, you're rich, or you drive this, you're rich. And it's like you have no idea what people are dealing with or what they have because it could all just be an act.
Right. And some of the most financially wealthy people look like just the average Joe dressed down on the street. And
right, when you see that farmer getting out of his car and he's got overalls that are all ripped and he bought them in the 70s, yet he's driving in a Ford F-150 Raptor, right? Probably has a little bit of money, right? But you couldn't tell just by looking at him or her individually. So
do you believe that life will inspire you how to be a giver? If that question makes sense at all. I'll give you an example of what I mean. I had a brother who passed away in '05. And when he was a child, my mom had sent him to foster care at 10 years old. And he was 10 years older than me and 12 years older than my younger sister. Half brother. And so he would come back from time to time, and my sister and I absolutely adored our brother. And then he got out of high school and went into the Navy, and he would write us letters and send us pictures. And my childhood, most of me and my sisters, like our lockers in middle school were plastered with pictures of our brother.
Yep.
For whatever reason, he just was super special to us. And when I became an adult, I had this deep, 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 deep longing to be a foster parent. And I really, truly believe it had a lot to do with my brother not having the best of a situation and going to live in foster care.
Sure.
And
Yeah, I think that you're brought through certain circumstances and situations in your life to create those types of desires or needs to serve in a certain one way or another. Like I said, I think the world is so perfectly orchestrated that, if we all wanted to be foster parents and nobody wanted to help feed the poor, right? Well, there's a lack there then, what do we do there? So I think, I think again, God leads you in the direction that he needs you to be in. And your circumstances led you into having that desire and that need to serve that, and you can look at it as, were you trying to serve, was it the foster parent portion, or was it to show an abundance of love to maybe somebody that didn't have it, right? And so, I think it's definitely orchestrated.
yeah. And then I guess when I reflect more on ways I've been inspired to give, when I think back about Draven going through kidney failure and being in ICU and then a heart surgery at a young age, we had utilized the Ronald McDonald House.
Yep.
And I don't remember if it was I think it was in the following Christmas. Like that was one way that I wanted to give back was, going to drop off supplies and donations to that house because it had been there for us in a time of absolute, just
absolutely
a scary point and a time in need. So.
Yeah. And how many other people has that benefited, right? I mean, you'll never know. But you know how it benefited you, and it created that desire and that need in your heart to get back to it.
Absolutely. So, are you currently still a part of Rotary?
I am.
Yes. Okay. So, you do giving through Rotary as well, right?
I do.
Okay. Talk a little bit about Rotary. You and I have talked about it before.
Yep.
I haven't been a part of it, so I don't remember exactly
Sure.
The ups and downs of it.
Yeah, so Rotary is a service organization, right? Think of Kiwanis, Lions Club, all that. Rotary just happens to be the largest one in the world. There's 200 clubs around the world, 1.2 or 3 million people. And really, it's all about doing good in the world. And so, Tina and I have a belief in our heart that we need to donate to Rotary financially, simply because it's one of the, I use charitynavigator.org for everything. If you don't, go out there and look up American Cancer Society or Rotary or anything that you're donating money to. It will give you a rating, 4 stars, 100 up to 100%. Rotary always, I think for 5 years straight, gets 4 stars. It's ranked at 100%. And the reason it ranks so high is because everything you give to it goes back to a project. So I also give to the American Cancer Society because my father died of lung cancer, and that ranks at like 80 something. Well, why does it rank so much lower than Rotary? Because you have doctors' salaries, you've got all this stuff. Rotary is just 1.3 million volunteers around the world. So Rotary has done stuff. Most people don't know this because people that do a lot of stuff don't brag about it. But Rotary has done things such as the eradication of polio, right? So when Rotary got involved in 1985, there was 300 countries that had polio. Rotary said, why are we letting children become paralyzed, dragging themselves across the street for the rest of their lives or dying when all they need is 2 drops of medicine? How can we change these lives? And so Rotary got involved and started partnering up with people all around the world, including, World Health Organization, countries, locals, all that stuff. Now polio's down to 2 countries, Pakistan and Afghanistan. This year, since January 1, there's only been 10 cases in the world, versus there used to be 350,000 cases a year when Rotary got involved. So that's the kind of work that Rotary is doing around the world. And then I was involved in a project about 10 years back where I had heard that girls couldn't go to school when they turned 13 years old. And I was like, why? And this was in Africa. And it was because they didn't have a bathroom and their bodies go through changes and their menstrual cycle starts. And there was no bathroom for them to take care of themselves. And at the time, my daughter was 13 years old. And so I was told, these girls were told, you can no longer go to school. And I thought, I couldn't imagine going to my daughter and saying, hey, all your hopes and dreams that you had, your body changed, so you can't have them anymore. There's no place for you to take care of your needs. And so I got involved in the project, worked with places all over Wisconsin. We raised $30,000. Rotary matched it 8, 10 times, ended up turning into like 250, 300,000. And another place out in New York ran with it, turned into a $2 million project. And what it did was not only provided bathrooms for these young girls so they could go to school, it also, you and I know about washing hands and all that. We've heard about that since kindergarten, right? You walk out of the bathroom, your teacher's like, you wash your hands, you wash your hands. Well, these kids were never even trained on it. They didn't even have clean water because the people up the river were washing their bodies, and this is the same water they're drinking and stuff. So where are they going to, wash their hands? And so there was educational programs and all this in there. And the stats and all that, it changed the lives of over 86,000 people, and that's all great. But there's two stories that they interviewed this one mom and said, "What's the difference now that Rotary's been here?" And she said, "The difference is I don't have to give my baby poisoned water, and so my babies aren't dying anymore." And I thought, man, that's crazy to think that her only alternative was give her baby poison because the other alternatives don't give it water. It's going to die instantly. So she just had to roll the dice. Then they asked a 14-year-old girl, now that you can be educated, what are you going to do? And this girl sat there and thought for about 10, 15 seconds. And then she goes, well, I'm either going to teach my grandma how to read. And I thought, how phenomenal is that she's now going to educate her grandma, her mom, all these women that couldn't go to school because their body changed. And then she said, or I'm going to become the president of my country. And I thought, a single bathroom gave this girl the option to become the president of her country. How spoiled are we in the United States? So that's why Tina and I believe in and belong to Rotary, because we can do things like make a promise to a mom that their child will never have to drag themselves across the street paralyzed because they didn't get 2 drops of medicine. Or we can give a young girl a bathroom so she can become the president of her country. Or right here in the U.S., we can send somebody on a scholarship to school. Last weekend, I just went to something called RYLA, Rotary Youth Leadership Academy, and there was 100 kids there from around Wisconsin. First time I'd ever been to that event, and we were teaching them leadership skills. And I walked out of that event, and I was blown away with how good of a place I feel we are in this world with kids like I got to spend the weekend with. So I went there to give, and I walked away getting. I was so filled up on Monday that just from this. And so, and so I look at those opportunities and that's why I give to Rotary. There are other organizations out there just as good that other people believe in and have those opportunities. But Rotary really lets me give at whatever level I have, whether it's energy, whether it's talent, whether it's treasure, whatever. And I can make a difference. And so that's kind of why we've focused on it for the past 20 something years.
So you've been involved for 20-some years?
I got in 2002. I joined just to get to know everybody in Prairie du Chien when I moved to Prairie, and I stayed in because I saw it was making a difference.
Wow. That's what I was going to ask, was how you were brought to that. So wanted to meet people, and it turned into be so much more. Yep. What year was Rotary founded? Do you know?
Yeah, it was founded in like 1905 or something like that. I mean, it was actually founded from a guy, Paul Harris. He lived in Iowa. He moved to Chicago. And there was so much corruption, which is kind of funny because I was born and raised Chicago, but there's so much corruption, and he just couldn't find good people like he had in Iowa. And so he started a group so that he can meet with ethical people on a weekly basis that had the same beliefs as him. And so that's kind of how they started. Once they got together, they said, well, it's great to meet and talk and have lunch together, but why don't we do stuff for other people in our community? The very first project that Rotary ever did is they put in a public toilet in Chicago, so which makes me laugh. And it's like, well, now years later, I did a toilet in Africa, so back to its roots, right?
Where did the name come from? Do you know?
Yeah, so Rotary actually was they would rotate around to their different businesses, and that's where the meetings would be. And so at that time, it's not like this anymore, but at that time, you could only have one lawyer, one doctor, one, so there was never two IT companies or anything like that. It was always just one, and you just rotated, and then you did business together because you knew that person was ethical and that they weren't going to take advantage of you. So that's kind of how the whole Rotary name started and how the organization started.
Sounds phenomenal.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it definitely started for all the right reasons, and it's continued to this day. 120 years later, it's still serving people all over the world and in our own backyard.
So I feel like we're just transitioning right into a perfect rounding out of our conversation today of Rotary and winding out with like what your dreams are for retirement.
Yep.
And I feel like I said a couple of years ago, something about a
Yep.
Rotary and a ship, and just tell me the things.
Yeah, so Tina and I always say we want to be Rotary retired. And what we mean by that is, will we serve, will we be on doing things with Rotary, with other organizations? Doesn't matter to me. Rotary just means service. So our goal is to retire with enough energy and hopefully treasure and talent in our lives that we can just give back, And so I think about things like, serving with the youth and doing RILA. That was a tremendous weekend. So, stuff like that. Instead of just donating to that project in Ghana, going to Ghana and maybe help installing some of those bathrooms. You're talking about the ship. My goal is there's a ship out there. I think Rotary helps fund it, but I think it's on its own. It's called Mercy Ships. So if anybody checks out mercyships.org, I think it is. They travel around Africa and they just stop in different areas in Africa where people have never had access to high level medical treatment. And so think about cleft palates or limbs that maybe were broken or deformed that never had access to change it. And so this giant ship, which is just a huge hospital, just pulls up to the shore. For weeks, they serve people out of this port. They do surgeries on them. They give them top medical care. And then they move on to another port. And they just keep making the rounds year after year after year, giving medical access to all these people. And so you can volunteer for up to like 3 months at a time and just serve on this ship. And I don't know what talents I'll have. Maybe I'm just the guy that washes the floors or something, because I'm definitely not a doctor. But how awesome would that be to see, somebody that, had a cleft palate or something that we in the United States don't even see ever. Yet it's affected them their whole life, and a ship pulls up and takes care of it in 2 days. So my goal really is to be able to serve and enjoy life for the rest of my life, just helping others and doing good.
So the image of you talking about the ship and helping people that would never otherwise have that opportunity makes me reflect on some of my most precious memories raising my children as they've grown. Gav's 25, Drave's almost 15, and Amir's 5. And when we venture out to take them to another country or somewhere where it's not what they're used to seeing here in the U.S., and that is like the most valuable experience for them. And, they just get quiet and kind of jaw dropped and shaken up a little bit. But it's so important to get your littles out to see the world, to really know and understand that not everyone lives like we get to here, and that there's so much to be grateful for. And probably my favorite trip with Gavin was a volunteer trip that we did together. And
I did similar with Joseph. He'll be 21 next week. Took him to Guatemala, and we were working with, they were called the Children of the Dump. They literally would follow trucks that were going into the dump, and when the garbage dumped, they would scavenge for food and things like that. And this is how these children survived. And their parents and them lived in the dump. They just threw up walls of wood that they found, and that was their house. And we went and visited, went into their homes and talked to these people. And Joseph, at the age of like 13 or 14, got to see this. And now he's a young man, and his heart is huge. And it makes me think, obviously a lot of that comes, I think, from his mother. But I also think a lot of it too comes from the exposure that we gave him, to see that how blessed we are. Even when sometimes it seems like the paycheck's not going to make it to the end of the week or something like that, to realize, but I'm not chasing a truck into a dump, right? I'm not. I have real walls over my head. I've got running water that I can wash my hands on. I don't ever. Heck, we don't even give our dogs or our cats poisoned water, let alone our babies. Things like that. And so
we shit in clean water.
That's exactly
in the
it.
U.S.
Yep, that's exactly it. So you look at that, and it's like, yeah. I mean, it is. We are so blessed, and I think you're right. Exposing our children to see that at a young age, and and I know people can say, well, I don't have money to travel internationally. You don't have to. There's stuff right in our own backyard, right? There's stuff that's happening in Crawford County, Grant County, all over the place where you can go out and help people that are just having a tough time, and they need a hand up, and so involving your kids in that, even if it's go work at the church soup kitchen or whatever, but let your children get exposed to that stuff, because they need to realize how good we really have it.
Yes, I feel like the most grateful hearts become the biggest givers.
I agree.
And Draven he's 14, and he blows me away. Ever since Gavin, who's now 25, was about 3, we go around the dinner table every night and we talk about what we're thankful for each day, and we all take turns. And Draven just blows me away. He'll think of things that sometimes don't even cross my mind, but I don't think there's ever a day in the winter, and even if it's not dinner time, if it's any time of day, he might bring up like, do you ever think about like how thankful we are to have this warm house? Because like, just think what it would be like if we didn't have a house and it was this cold outside. And like, the reality of it is like things had to happen for that house to exist. And things happen in life where someone may be out in the cold, in the freezing cold, and not have that warm house. But yeah, definitely exposing them to contrast and unfavorable circumstances is life-changing, especially, like you said, at a young age where they can begin to see all of that.
Yeah, I joke all the time. Our generation screwed this world up. Our kids got to fix it. So let's make sure we're raising them right, because they've got a lot of work to do. So.
Oh, Joe, thank you so much for your time and very heartwarming and heart-filling conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes,
it was awesome.
Absolutely. All right, we'll chat again.
Sounds good.